Happy 4th of July, super fun recipe today. I've decided to make this an annual video that I do in a series of videos of sort of patriotic recipes. Last year I did Thomas Jefferson's sweet potato pecan biscuits on the 4th of July, and this year I'm doing Mr. Washington's cherry pie from the All-Purpose Baker's Companion, put out by the King Arthur Baking Company. This is obviously, Thomas Jefferson was the 3rd president of the United States. George Washington is the 1st president of the United States, and there's an apocryphal story of George Washington cutting down a cherry tree and then not being able to lie about it when his parents asked him if he had actually cut it down. I don't think that story actually happened, but it's one of the sort of like mythical stories in American history. So, but whatever, it's a super fun recipe, and it's not meant to be taken too seriously. But this is just a double pie crust with a wonderful tart cherry filling, and then mixed in with some cinnamon and some other spices. So let's go ahead and just hop into the kitchen. I think you guys are going to enjoy this one. I'm going to begin this recipe the same way we begin most pie recipes, by making a flaky, buttery double pie crust. So that's 2.5 cups of all-purpose flour, and then 2 sticks of cold butter that I've cut up. And we're just going to mix these by hand until the pieces of butter get incorporated into the dough into almost like a wet sand texture, or at least the butter should be reduced down to less than pea-sized bits. Now we're just going to pour in a little ice water, a couple of tablespoons at a time, and then work the dough with our hands just until the point that we get a nice, soft, pliable dough. Again, you want to make sure you're working with cold butter and cold water when you're making pie dough. You want to work the dough just until it sticks together into one ball like this. And now I'm going to divide that roughly in half and form that into a ball and then a little disc, and put that on some paper here and cover that up and let this chill for about 30 minutes. To make the pie filling in this recipe, we need a large bowl, and we need 3 cans of sour or tart cherries. They're the same thing. I got these at Whole Foods, but you want to drain them of their liquid, reserving 2/3 of a cup, which can go back in. Then we've got 3/4 of a cup of sugar, 3/4 of a teaspoon of cinnamon, as well as a 1/4 cup of tapioca starch. We're going to put in a pinch of salt. Of course, I'll be using my Alaskan vanilla salt, but you can use whatever salt is available to you. And then the last thing is about a teaspoon of almond extract. And then we're just going to mix all of this together until everything gets fully incorporated. And then we're going to let this sit for about 20 minutes. On a lightly floured surface, we're going to take our first disc of dough, and we're just going to roll that one out to be about 10.5 inches, big enough to drape and completely fill a 9-inch pie pan. And we've got our trusty pie pan here, and we're just going to drape this dough in. And like usual, we just want to make sure that we're really letting that dough rest in there and we're not stretching it. You don't want any air pockets to form between the dough and the actual pie pan itself. And then we will go ahead and trim the edges roughly around so they're about even. Now we're going to go ahead and fill our pie with the filling. And be careful because it will splash around on you. I've diced 2 tablespoons of butter into cubes, and we're just going to dot these around the filling. And the reason that we do this is this tapioca starch is going to cause this filling to bubble over when you're baking it. That's why you usually put a pan underneath it for the overflow, so you don't burn the bottom of your oven. But putting this butter on supposedly helps tamp that down so that doesn't happen as much. At this point, go ahead and preheat your oven to 425 degrees Fahrenheit. And now we're going to do the same thing and roll out our second disc of dough. This one doesn't have to go quite as far, so about maybe 9.5, 10 inches is all you need to use for this one. In this kind of pie, you usually need to have some steam holes so that air can escape. And since this is my 4th of July pie, I'm going to do something here just to make it a little more festive. And I'm going to make some star cutouts for those holes. At this point, we're going to very carefully, so we don't cause those stars to get misshapen, drape this over the bottom layer and try to get it as centered as we can. And once again, I'm going to trim these edges so we end up with an even crust. I'm also going to take one of those stars and put that right there in the middle. Look at that. Doesn't that just make you feel patriotic? With the pie trims, now what we're going to do is we're going to go around and we're actually going to fold this. A lot of times you fold under, but in this case, we're going to fold up and over to really lock this in so that these juices don't escape via the sides there. So just go all the way around and roll it up, and don't feel bad about pressing down to really seal that together. Again, make sure you're putting this on a sheet pan because it's almost certainly going to bubble up to some extent. Now we're going to put this in the oven at 425 Fahrenheit for 15 minutes, and then we're going to lower the temperature to 350 and leave it in there for 35 to 50 more minutes until everything looks like it's done. I just took the pie out of the oven, and it's going to continue to brown as it cools down. As with all fruit pies, this is still very liquidy, so you want this to completely settle down and cool all the way back to room temperature before you do anything else with it. The pie has completely cooled, and I think this came out pretty good. I did make one mistake that I wanted to just point out. Cooking is a process where you should be trying to get better each time. And one thing I messed up on this was I made these star cutouts a little too loose from the center. I should have bunched them up a little closer to the center. And the reason for that is some of these ones on this side here are a little too close to the edge, and that caused the liquid to spill over. The pie still tastes delicious. There's nothing wrong with it. It's not going to affect the flavor at all. It just makes it look a little discolored where the liquid came out on this side. But there's not really, it doesn't have any effect on the overall, how good the dessert is. So, if you enjoy my videos, I'm going to make this an annual series where I try to do something, fun and patriotic every 4th of July. Last year I did Thomas Jefferson's sweet potato pecan biscuits. This year, Mr. Washington's cherry pie, and I've got some recipes that I'll do in future years. But if you have any suggestions, please leave them in the comments. I'd love to hear them.